Hello everyone, this is Gautam from Shailaja. Now we look into the issue that was in news in January 2026, which was your Venezuela crisis. Okay, so what is this exact issue? On January 3rd, 2026, your US military conducted an operation whereby it sent its troops to Venezuelan country. The sitting president and along with his wife were arrested or captured, taken back to the US so as to try for your drugs involvement cases. So can you imagine this? A sitting president of a country is now being captured by the US military and taken back to the US to stand trial in the US courts. Imagine if the same thing happens in any of our neighboring countries, like India conducting a similar kind of an operation in Bangladesh or Pakistan or Sri Lanka or Nepal or Bhutan or otherwise. Okay, imagine the psychological impact it is sending to other countries. Okay, so this is something which we have not witnessed in the recent 7 to 8 decades, where such kind of direct military intervention on acting or sitting presidents or prime ministers is happening in a brazen manner by your US. Right? So we'll understand the brief context behind this issue. We'll understand what are the reasons that US has actually given and what is the real political game behind these actions. So whatever it is saying, we should not take it at the surface. We have to look deeper and we have to try and understand the real political calculations of why it took this particular step. And we'll try and understand, because of this particular incident, what are the implications at the global level and what are the implications specifically for India. Okay, so first and foremost, you have to understand where this country is situated. Situated in South American continent at its tip. This is your Venezuela. This is your Brazil. This is your Colombia. Okay, this is your Mexico. This is your US. Okay, so USA is over here. Both are in your same, you can say, American continent. One is in North American continent, second is your Southern American continent. Okay, so these two states are generally considered as origin states for your narcotics or drugs. Okay, that cocaine, meth. I think people who have watched the Narcos series in Netflix will better understand what I'm trying to convey. Okay, so these two are states which are pumping in large amounts of your cocaine and other sort of psychotropic drugs through Mexico into the US, and it is severely impacting your US economy. It is severely impacting the health and productivity of your youth. So US is in this particular situation. Okay. Now, as I already told you, the sitting president was arrested and taken back to the US to try and file or to fight the case of supporting your drug cartels or supporting your narcotics. Now, what are the reasons that US gave when trying to make this arrest or when conducting these operations? The first and the foremost reason which US gave was that it wanted to tackle this narco-terrorism. It clearly stated that Venezuela is a narco state. Means the entire country is basing itself on exporting your drugs to the nearby US. Similar to what Pakistan, more or less its entire foreign policy is against India. So India can clearly say that entire objective, or a terror state or a terror sponsor state. Like India is always, you can say, portraying Pakistan as a state which supports terrorism. Similarly, US is trying to portray Venezuela that it is supporting drugs and it is supporting narcotics, and hence it has given the tag of narco state or narco country. Okay, so they say that Venezuela is directly posing a threat to US national security because it is a narco state. And in order to deal with this narco-terrorism or narcotics or drug problem, it is better we try and attack the core itself. And who is that core? The sitting president, who is indirectly or directly supporting this entire narcotics cartel and entire narcotics operations. They say that in order to safeguard this national security from the narcotics or drugs, it is better we go directly to the source and try to resolve that particular problem. So that is one of the justification given by US. The second justification which the US has given to the outside world is that it is trying to restore democracy. Why? Because in 2024, elections were conducted and it was widely believed that the sitting president, that is Nicolas Maduro, was elected in a not so comfortable manner, but somehow he stole the elections. So the integrity of elections itself were questioned. So other Western countries started saying that he was not properly elected, he misused the counting process, and therefore he became the president. So democracy is not proper over there. In order to restore the democracy, this guy has to be removed. So he became the target of USA with regard to restoration of democracy also. Now there is a counter argument. Counter argument is what? This particular person is leaning more and more towards your Russia and China. Okay, so obviously when he wins an election or when he becomes the president of the country, the rival camp, which is your US camp, is always going to put some other allegations saying that the elections were not conducted properly, this person was involved in corruption, is not a democratic country. So this political game is going to continue. Okay, but one of the reason which was given by USA is that the 2024 elections were stolen by Maduro, and in order to restore democracy, we are trying to capture him and we are trying to establish a transition government in Venezuela. Okay. And obviously, the third argument which the US has given is your responsibility to protect doctrine. See, in the era of this international world order, where the principle of sovereignty is upheld. Sovereignty means what? You are the supreme power with regard to your domestic and external affairs. So other country cannot involve in the third country. Okay. So for example, India cannot involve directly into the affairs of your Sri Lanka or Nepal or Bhutan or Pakistan, because it is considered as a violation of sovereignty of that country. Similarly, China or USA cannot involve into the affairs of India. For example, whatever we are doing with Northeast or Kashmir or Naxalism, USA cannot come and directly interfere because it is considered as it is our internal matter. We will take a decision accordingly. So it is considered as a violation of sovereignty. So in this principle, if another country tries to intervene, it is generally criticized by other global powers. So what USA tries to say, so I cannot remain silent every time. If a common citizen is suffering over there, if the common citizen in the other country is not able to lead a dignified life, then as a global superpower, as a global power, it becomes my responsibility to protect that citizen so I can intervene. So it has come out with its own doctrine called as responsibility to protect doctrine to justify such kind of interventions in third country, which are usually considered as violation of your sovereignty. Okay, so all these three justifications were given by the US when conducting these operations, which captured your Venezuelan president, sitting president, arrested and taken back to the US. So are these the real justification, or is there something deeper political behind it? The first and foremost thing why US is invading or why US has taken this particular action is because of energy. See, if you clearly look into it, Venezuela sits on the world's largest proven oil reserves. So beneath that land, you have almost 300 billion barrels of oil. That is very, very important. So you need to have a friendly regime over there so that you get easy access to the oil resource. Now, why only at this particular point of time? Now, what is happening around the world, if you look at a broader geopolitical context, Russia is fighting a war with Ukraine. And how is Russia getting money in order to fund its war? Russia is selling its own oil resources to other countries, primarily China, India, and other West Asian countries or African countries. And whatever money it is getting by selling oil at a cheaper rate, by selling oil to other countries, it is using it to fund its war in Ukraine. Now, Donald Trump has come up with a genius plan. What he says, if suppose the money which the Russia is getting by selling oil, if that money is reduced, obviously it is going to impact on its Ukraine war. So Russia will not be having sufficient money in order to fund the war. And as a result, it can achieve its objectives or Russia can be defeated. So what US wants to achieve is to reduce the revenue from the oil resources for Russia. Now, how will the revenue going to reduce for the Russia oil, whatever revenue it is going to get from the oil, if you were to alter the oil prices? How can you alter the oil prices if in a global market, if the supply is drastically increased? Okay, suppose today, for example, when 10 barrels of oil are being given in the market. Okay, there is Saudi Arabia, there is Russia, there is US, there is India. All other countries are producing oil and they are willing to sell overall 10 units of oil to the world market. And people will bid. It might be bid by Europe, it might be bid by India. Other countries will bid. And whoever gets the best price, they will take out the oil and they'll use it for their own domestic purposes. Now, if you go into the deeper aspects of or the simpler basic fundamentals of economics, whenever the supply is increased, suppose the 10 units are there in the market, if you increase it to 12 units, if you increase it to 14 units, obviously the price is going to come down. Same thing. Okay, for example, if there are, you can say only 10 sellers in the market. For example, in telecom market only you take. If there are only 2 players, prices will be high. Supply is limited, right? If there are 10 players, like what you are happening with your broadcasting TV channels, if there are 100 channels, most of them will give you for free. That is what is happening in IS coaching institute also. Supply is more. There are hundreds of institutes. Supply is more. So your prices is going to automatically come down. Same thing US is planning with regard to oil. When you capture Venezuela, when you capture its oil resources and put it in the oil market, supply is going to increase. Now the supply is increased, prices is going to come down. So oil prices is going to come down eventually. Now when the oil prices is going to come down, Russia, which was earning money by selling oil, its revenue is going to come down. Why? Because the overall price is down, right? For example, if Russia earlier was selling 10 units at, for example, 100 rupees, it used to earn, I'm just giving you an example, 1000 rupees. For example, if the same Russia is selling 10 units at 80 rupees, now why this price is decreased? Because supply has increased. How the supply is increasing? Because Venezuela, which is sitting under the world's largest oil resources, is trying to put more and more oil into the market. Okay, as a result, your overall revenue is going to drop to 800 rupees. So 1000 to 800. Why? Because prices come down. Why prices come down? Because supply from other players has increased. So this is the end game. So once your revenue is decreased, your ability to fight a war in Ukraine is going to reduce. So that opens a window for Western powers like USA and Europe to negotiate at a better terms with Russia and defeat Russia. Okay, so that is the overall idea, right? Of why US wants to, the timing is necessary, why the timing was urgent, because it wants to control the oil supply and the oil prices. Okay, now it also wants to break OPEC plus organization. OPEC is oil producing and exporting countries. It's a grouping of oil producing nations who are cumulatively controlling the prices. So as a result, if Venezuela is broken out of this particular grouping, you can set the prices. Okay, so that's they're trying to break the unity of this OPEC plus. Okay, and obviously in the era of the climate change, when there is push by the new lobby of green energy, the old lobby, who is the old lobby? The oil lobby, the coal lobby. All these lobbies or all these industries are trying to push or trying to fight back, saying that no, climate change and all is not correct. Our oil is good, our coal is good, it is much more cheaper. So they are trying to push back. So there is US corporate interest, US oil industry who wants to benefit from this. Because ultimately what will happen? Venezuela's oil resources are being auctioned to the US oil companies. These companies are going to extract it, make a profit out of it. Okay, so this is the oil or energy game, which is one of the primary factors for US to invade or to capture your Venezuelan leader. Okay. Second important factor or real political game which has pushed US to adopt this measure is Monroe Doctrine. James Monroe was the president of USA in 1823, and he came up with a doctrine which said that the Western or the American hemisphere, the Western hemisphere should not be interfered by other European powers, because 19th century was a peak era of your European colonialism, where European powers like British, French, Spanish, Dutch, they were establishing colonies all across the world, in Africa, in Asia. They also tried to establish colonies in South America and North America. James Monroe was the president of USA in 1823, said that no more. We are not going to be under the influence of your European powers. This entire hemisphere, this Western Hemisphere, North America and South America will not be under the influence of Europe. We, at the same time, we will also not interfere in your own affairs. So your Europe, whatever you do, Asia, whatever you do, Africa, whatever you do, we will not come to interfere. We will not unnecessarily poke our nose into your affairs. Likewise, you are not going to poke in our affairs. So, in a way, they are trying to say that this entire North America and South America should be under the influence of USA. Similar to what India also is having a similar ambitions in our own region. In Indian subcontinent or South Asia region. South Asia includes what? India, Pakistan, Afghanistan also you can include, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, your ASEAN countries, your Maldives, your Sri Lanka. This is considered as your South Asia. India aspires that the entire South Asia should be under its own influence. Okay, so it means that it is the final power in order to decide the direction of this region. The similar kind of a doctrine was established almost 2 centuries back itself by US President James Monroe, who said that Western Hemisphere should be under the control of US. At the same time, it said that European powers should not interfere here. Now you might ask, sir, who is interfering now? Why there is a renouement of Monroe Doctrine? Why Trump is saying that we need to go for Monroe Doctrine 2.0? Because Venezuela was having a favorable leader to Chinese and Russians. So Russia and China were slowly increasing their influence in your Colombia, which is against your US interest, which is against your US Monroe Doctrine. So they were very clear. We cannot have our rivals sitting next door. We want our backyard to be under our own influence. That is the real political game of your USA with regard to removing your Maduro. Okay, once this leader who is favorable to China and Russia is removed, you can place your own leader over there and you can ask your competitors to leave. Okay. For example, whatever contracts were given to Russia, whatever contracts were given to China, you can clearly say that no, we are renewing the contracts, you please leave from our country. So USA wants to have its own backyard under its own influence. So there is a geopolitical game which is going on. And it is also a message to other left-leaning regimes. Left-leaning regimes means which are favorable to your Russia and China. Now, there are other countries in South America where there is obviously another political parties who want to align more and more with your China. So this measure itself is clearly sending a message. If you are moving closer to US, Russia or China, we will make sure that you will not survive. That is the message which USA is trying to send through this particular incident. Okay, and finally there is a migration angle for this US measure. What is this migration angle? See, obviously if there is instability or if the economy is not booming in Venezuela, people will move towards USA where there is better economic opportunities, better lifestyle, and there is a large amount of immigration which is flowing into US. And Trump has always used this as an election agenda, whereby he said that there are a lot of immigrants over there, we'll push them to their home country, we'll try to build walls. Okay, so this measure will also give a selling point to his own domestic voter base. What he is going to sell to his domestic voter base, he is going to say, we are trying to address the immigration at the source itself. We'll try to fix the problem at the source so that these people will not migrate to the country. Same thing, right? In India also, if you see, there are a lot of you can say people who are coming or migrating from your Ganga belt, that is UP and Bihar, to southern states like Maharashtra, Bangalore, Chennai. There is always an insider-outsider conflict. So obviously when a political leader comes and says that I am going to interfere in the affairs of the origin states itself, I am going to fix that, your domestic political constituents are always going to be happy. Okay. Same thing he is trying to apply over there. He is saying that the intervention in Venezuela is required because I will fix this immigration problem at the source itself. I am going to fix the narcotics problem at the source, and I am also going to fix the immigration problem at the source. So he is going to have his domestic support. Okay. Now this is the, you can say, background or the political game of your USA. Now from an examination perspective, what becomes important is not these political games or strategies. No. What becomes important is the implications of these measures on the world and specifically towards India. Now, what is the implication of this? There is a resurgence of your Neo-Imperialism. Now, what is imperialism? Imperialism is a situation where a powerful country controls a less powerful or a poor country or a weak country. That is very simple. There is a rich and a powerful country. This is going to control a poor and weak country. Now, how are they going to control? They can control either through direct military way. One of the subset of your imperialism was your colonialism. Through direct military intervention, they used to send their troops into their colonies and they used to control the affairs. That is what Britishers did to India for almost 2 centuries, where there was colonialism, which is a larger aspect, which is a subset of your larger phenomenon called as imperialism, because the rich and powerful country was controlling your weak and poor country. Or they can use it through economic dominance. That is what US tried to do after World War II. They did not directly send their military people to the other countries. What they did, they tried to control the economy. They tried to control the trade. They tried to control the resources supply. That is how they tried to establish their control over other countries. Third aspect of how the rich and the powerful country is going to control your weak country is through your political ideology. They are going to always push democracy is a better value. Authoritarianism is bad. Dictatorship is bad. Monarchy is bad. Go for democracy. Go for democracy. Go for capitalism. Go for market reforms. That is how they are going to exert control. Okay. And why are they exerting control? Why? What do they need? Okay. Ultimately, why are they controlling? Resources. They want resources or they want markets. They want to extract the resources from that, or they want to sell it to their host country. That is what Britishers also did to us. Britishers extracted all the raw materials, processed it and sold the finished products into our country. Same thing US will also try to do. If you are not opening up your markets, you will be pressurized. Okay. So these are the ways in which the rich country is going to exert control over the poor country for your resources and markets and trade control. Either they want to take the resources, or they want to control the trade routes, or they want to open up their markets for their own goods. Okay, so that is the ultimate objective of your imperialism. Now, with this act, there is a resurgence of this imperialism. Until now, imperialism was also there, but it was under a subtle manner. It was in an indirect manner through your economic dominance. Now, US is shifting its gear and saying that I'll directly intervene. Okay, I'll directly take this military action in order to establish my dominance, in order to establish my control and power. Okay. Now, because of this resurgence of imperialism, what is going to happen is that international law or international institutions like your United Nations, all these are going to lose its own significance or importance. So there is going to be erosion of multilateral institutions, international rule of order. All these things we are going to take a back step. Obviously, another implication is your global oil markets. In the beginning, for short term, there is going to be disruption. Whenever there is instability, there is going to be disruption. But in medium to long term, your oil market will be coming under a more direct control by your USA. USA by itself does not need oil. USA is already self-sufficient with regard to oil production. It has its own oil reserves. But it wants to control the price. And in order to control the price, it wants to control the supply. And in order to control the supply, you want to control the political power over there. Okay, so all of this are more or less the same game. Right? And obviously, as I told you, it's about your Monroe Doctrine, where US wants to retain its geopolitical significance in its backyard in both Northern and Southern America. So finally, what is the implications for India? India, obviously, when there is a fluctuation with regard to the oil prices, it can either benefit or it can be harmful. So in the short term, it will be harmful because there is going to be fluctuations or disruption in your oil supply. But in the medium to long run, when the oil prices are going to come down in the market, it's always beneficial for India because we are net importers. So as a result, in the long run, from an energy security perspective, India will be at a beneficial position. But what is going to be the challenge is ability for India to balance your US and being the voice of global South. For the last 7 decades, India has always been a voice of global South. India has always championed against colonialism, against imperialism. Now, whatever we are seeing is witnessing a resurgence of imperialism. Now, India is forced to raise its voice against such, you can say, such incidents. But at the same time, India is aligning more and more closer to US for its investment, for its technology, and for its support against China. So, should I support USA for this activity so that I get my own benefits from US, or should I be a voice of global South and continue to oppose imperialism and colonialism? So that is a tough balancing act which India has to carry on. So until now, there hasn't been any very concrete comment from Indian foreign policy perspective. But as in time goes, we'll try and see what is going to be the stance of India, right? So that is all for this particular issue. There is a small question. Recent unilateral means all by yourself. They are not getting any approval from any international institutions. Recent unilateral intervention in Venezuela by United States has revived the debate on neo-imperialism in the 21st century. Now, examine this event and in the context of effectiveness of international law. So you can attempt this and you can send it to me on my WhatsApp number or to my email ID. So looking forward to your feedback and comments and your answers.